Thanks everybody for coming. I'm Dawn Foster. I will be your moderator today. Just a quick introduction for me. I've been in the tech industry and working in open source for a few decades. Most recently, I've been working on data science at the Chaos Project, where I'm also a working group lead and co-chair of the Chaos Governing Board. I'm also on the board of Open UK, and I do various other bits and pieces of things in open source. So welcome everyone. What I'm going to do with the panel is I'm going to give each of them a question that they're going to use to also introduce themselves. So we'll kick it off that way. And if you have any questions throughout the panel, if you want to just put them in the online platform, we can take questions at any time. So it's with a panel, it's always great if we can get some audience questions. So don't hesitate to interrupt us if you want to ask a question from the audience. So let's just go ahead and kick it off with Ruth. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and talk about how Chaos Africa has been helping grow the next wave of contributors.
Hi everyone. It's afternoon here, so good afternoon. I'm joining from Lagos, Nigeria. I would have loved to make it in person, but yeah, this tomorrow is my birthday, so yeah, I couldn't. I couldn't travel. I wanted to spend it at home with family, so it's nice to see everyone. I see some familiar faces there as well. Yeah, my name is Ruth. Like Don introduced, I do a lot of things in open source. I am a community manager. I do program management, and this topic again is a topic that myself, Don, and Stephen have spoken about, and we are all passionate about bringing in new people into open source, and I have been focused on that for the past 6 years of my career, joining tech from a non-technical background. I had those challenges with engaging with people that had very expansive like experience in open source in tech, right? So at the time I joined, I think the first year I started contributing to open source, Chaos was my first actual project. And if you're not familiar with the Chaos project, we're a project under the Linux Foundation that creates metrics and software to help other open source communities measure health in their project and communities. So when I joined the Chaos Project at the time, like I said, I was really very new to tech, new to everything, new to open source as well. And I had these challenges with interacting with in meetings, understanding what's going on, understanding how to use specific platforms and tools. And I think very peculiar to the open source chaos project is it wasn't just software, so it wasn't just contribute code and go. It was there were different things. We were contributing metrics, and at the time I did not understand what was the use for metrics, like why do we need to measure stuff. So it was very confusing to me as a new contributor, and I could see that around me as well, around the area I was in. People were trying to contribute to open source from my country, from my region, and they were finding it difficult to understand how do I make a first contribution. So I think I'm very dedicated sometimes when I want to learn how to do something. So I went into it and started learning how to make contributions, and I was successful at it. So it was like, how do I bring in more people? I really love this project. How do I get in more people to make their first contributions? And I know at the time I started running very small. I would open up a Zoom link and share it for people to come and learn how to make a pull request to GitHub, right? And that was how people started, being part of the Chaos project, joining the project gradually. So now when people started coming in, I saw that I was building a community organically, like it was just word of mouth, right? Over the period of 2 years, I realized that we had a lot more contributors from Africa based off of the advocacy I was doing unknowingly to me at that time. So I think in After 2 years, we initially had chapters when I joined. So we now started. How about, I think Matt was the one that popped the question, would you want to create a chapter in Africa, for example? And I was like, yeah, cool, that would be great. And what we now focused on was finding ways for Africans to contribute to the Chaos Project. And that was a really interesting time, because at the time when people joined, they were confused, but they could see that things were going on. Where could I join? How do I participate in this big project, or in this project where there are different things, different moving parts? So we created different small working groups, or I'll call them focus groups, for instance, because we needed people to meet in smaller groups and discuss within themselves, and find connection with the project. So those working groups, for example, design, which is something that in open source that people sometimes would overlook. So we created design working groups because there were people that were designers that were interested in contributing to open source, or even researchers, for example. So as we started creating those smaller groups where people could meet, we saw that over time people were beginning to contribute meaningfully to the project in ways that maybe we had not originally thought of. And maybe to wrap this up, ending with one example, is I think one of the proudest contributions that I hold is the design group, in the sense that before that group, we would the working group leaders of chaos would like design things on their own, but now requests go to that group to be able to design things that would use graphics, different brand assets to use in the chaos project generally. So yeah, that has been my experience, and just even building chaos Africa, in the sense that I am bringing in people to attach their skill sets to things that originally they would not know how to contribute to. So beyond code, beyond the software, we're like making room for different people with different skill sets, research, writing, to get involved, social media, to get involved in making open source contributions.
Thanks, Ruth. Let's shift over to Stephen, who has a very, very different perspective on this, I think. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you've been doing to educate the next generation of contributors in a university setting?
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It's very early in the morning for me right now. I'm on the west coast of America. Um, so I've just retired after 45 years in the industry, and I just finished up at Microsoft. I'm still teaching a course, and I guess the course has been really interesting. We've been building it over the last 6 years now. It's taught in a Western university setting, and the first couple of years it was me talking about open source software and software engineering practice. And I came into it from a very different perspective. I came back to Microsoft 8 years ago, and I was noticing that software engineering skills weren't as strong as what I remembered they should be, kind of thing, the last time I was active in a software engineering setting. And I was looking at how do we tool up that next generation? And to me, open source software projects are this fantastic lab. And so I set about, I started at Johns Hopkins University. I was introduced into that setting, and I spent 2 years. And the kind of aha moment is, let's get students, these are all undergraduates, with give them a project in an open source project with an industry mentor, and I'd kind of decorate the top of that with some lectures. I was the entertainment value rather than the actual meat of the course, where the student was doing real work in a real software setting, because most undergraduates don't know what real software looks like. That program, we ran that for 2 years in a semester system, and it was interesting. We got all of the students, there was about 60 students over that 2 years through the program, and everybody made meaningful contribution, but we knew it didn't scale. the mentors and I were tired getting those students over the finish line, and I was really lucky. Uh, I had an opportunity to teach it as a summer internship with another professor at Carnegie Mellon University. And what we've discovered is that setting in the summer where students aren't kind of finding a few hours each week over a semester with 5 other courses, banging for their attention. Instead, it's a software internship. And the big aha for us was to shove the students together into teams of 5 so that the students are supporting each other. Like they're often working in a programming language they've never seen, and they're working with a tool chain that they didn't know existed. And so these are big pieces of work where 2 industry mentors are bringing them up through that learning curve, but they're teaching each other the tool sets, and they're teaching each other this in that setting. And we've just seen some phenomenal outcomes for the students. The students are walking away. You can watch their confidence build through that summer experience. And each year we run it, we continue to run it in a slightly different way. We ran it completely virtual last year. And, it's been a really satisfying experience. And we're looking for new ways to try and expand it and hand it out so we really can scale this in a bigger way. So it's been very exciting.
Thank you so much, Stephen. All right, so let's shift over to our third panelist, Peculiar. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself and talk about how you've been using the CHAOS Education Program to bring people into open source.
Hi, everybody. My name is Peculiar Umeh. I'm a software developer, project and community manager. I lead the CHAOS Education project. My journey into open source began as my way to upskill and work on real life projects. I know then I came across Opia Android project, and because I was at that time writing learning Android development, and an Opia Android project has to do with mathematics and education, which is mathematics was my course. Course I read in university. So that attracted me. So, and after some period of contribution, I started working, contracting with Andela Learning Community, and I also, joined and handled the Andela Learning Community open source program. But my experience in contributing to Opia Android, that was my first open source project. At first, it was challenging to navigate the code base, but as time went by, I got handle on it and I contributed quality code. Then at Andela Learning Community, we had this open source program I decided to join because of my passion. And just from things I got while contributing to Opia Android, for that period, I helped learners and some engineers, taught some how to collaborate in open source project and build an open source project. So after that, the challenge I faced while working on these 2 open source projects, later inspired me to create pathways for others and contributing to open source projects or community as is. It wasn't easy, like I mentioned at first, having to see a code base and then understand the other engineers' code and being able to send a PR and then navigate the community, get help from others who are there in the community, ask questions and get response. wasn't that easier at first. But then when I succeeded, I decided to create this pathway for others to join into open source and make it easier for them to navigate this open source landscape. So I took the lead on Kiosk education program when I joined Kiosk. The Kiosk education program was designed to simplify onboarding process into open source project or community. And not only that, it's also to empower contributors by developing courses on open source concepts, metrics, and other related uh, developers topics. This is just to create that simple way, make things easier for people to just join or be able to locate an open source project to contribute to, or join an open source community, and even understand some open source topics. Okay, so instead of just telling people, okay, go to GitHub, search like I was told, search for project, open source project, then start contributing, then allow them to navigate it their own way. With Kiosk Education Project Program, we provide a structured model-based course that explain the how, the why, and the how of open source contribution. So through this program, contributors not only learn, but also actively contribute to the project and creating a chain of knowledge transfer. So just like I have learned, then I had other contributors coming to work on this project, and they are also creating this knowledge transfer for others who are coming in or who are there, but they need to know and understand some certain open source topic. So some of our contributors do not just join Kiosk community or contribute only to our project, but they have found over time, we've seen that they found other open source projects also to contribute to, and they are staying in open source and then doing a whole lot of work, contributions. We've even seen one of them who is at the moment co-leading a working group at Kiosk. So seeing that growth is really incredibly rewarding. So for the Kiosk Education Project, we have developed about 27 courses, I may say, and have seen an increasing number of users since it was launched at January 2025. So yeah.
That's great. Thanks, Peculiar. I'm going to ask one more question, and any of the panelists are welcome to answer it. But I would say for the audience, think about if you have any questions, because after this, I'll see if there are any questions from the audience. And if not, I certainly have other questions for the panelists. But for the next question, let's talk about the role of mentoring in educating new open source contributors. Who'd like to go first on that one?
Yeah, maybe I can.
I'm happy to tackle it. It's been really interesting. Like I said, I came into this from a very different angle. A friend shoved a paper from Peter Nauer in front of me 10 years ago now. And it was a fascinating paper. Peter Nauer, this is Peter Nauer from Bacchus Nauer format back in, how do you express a language in a compiler in the 60s? And he wrote this paper in the mid 80s. So this is end of career for him. And his big observation was you need to mentor people into complex software systems. His research was he was basically asking the question, why is maintenance so hard? And the aha for him was when a team builds software, they're building a theory of how the world works. And the only way you can properly maintain that complex software is you have to mentor the next generation of programmers into the software. And that was a huge aha for him, but it's also something I think we've forgotten along the way. Around the same time, I encountered the work of, I had to, as I started building the coursework, I have no background in pedagogy. So I don't know how to teach people. And so I started digging into things and I discovered Jean Lave's work. She's an anthropologist who was, her graduate work back in the 80s was working with tailors, as in sewing clothes, in West Africa. And her big aha moment was to discover that all learning is social learning. And you start putting these ideas together and you end up in this space where it's all about mentorship all the time. And so that's where I've been really, very lucky with the folks that I've worked with and that have helped me over this last 6 years as we build courseware, is to step into the space where we're finding new and interesting ways to mentor the students into these complex projects. But it was even the frustration and the joy that a different colleague shoved a paper in front of me. And I think the paper was near peer mentorship in coding boot camps. And I have a real bias against coding boot camps just because of my background. And that's not a fair bias at all. I want to be clear. There's lots of ways to teach people things. But the joy of it was I was reading this paper and I really wanted to hate the paper because it was about coding boot camps, right? And it was talking about near peer mentorship in these programs while I was watching the students in front of me mentoring each other up these complex tool chain learning curves. And it really is like, how do you construct these learning opportunities for folks that are new to software? I mean, I'm working with computer science students and, they've got a basic set of programming skills in their first couple of years, but they still don't know what real software looks like. And I think that's the opportunity, is how do you create these learning moments for students where it really isn't about me at the front of the class, kind of entertaining them and trying to tell them stories. It really is about giving them things to do which get progressively harder. And so that's all of the course design that I've been going through with colleagues, is about getting better mentoring opportunities for the students. And it holds them in these big projects as well, because they suddenly discover a collection of people around them. It becomes that family for them to help them find their way into the project. So I'm a big fan of mentorship. I think that's really, at the end of the day, what all of it is about.
Yeah. Okay, Ikegah, you can go.
Okay, so I would still say mentoring plays an important role in educating new open source contributors, honestly. While working on Kiosk Education project, I've come across are in contact with different types of contributors, especially those that are new contributors who come in with passion, and doesn't know where to start from. But mentoring them has got us this far. Mentoring new contributors is about guiding them and teaching them sometimes, encouraging them, and helping them navigate the complexity of open source landscape. I participated in All in Open Source program for Africa as West African Region Ambassador. I think Ruth can testify of this. A lot of participants we had then, they were complete. Some of them were completely new to open source contributions. So we went as far as teaching how to find a good first issue to work on, how to submit first PR, how to collaborate effectively in open source, and what it means when your PR fails and what you need to do. Because personally, my first time when I started contributing to Opia Android project, my first PR failed. And that was really like as if somebody doesn't want me to do this, as if, I mean, there's something wrong, as if it was like, what have I done, that kind of situation for me. So but when I went back and then I try again, I try to figure out what happened and asked my mentor question. Then he explained, and that helped me contribute. So this set of contributors we had then, I feel this might be the question I asked myself then, might be one of the way they will be feeling at that moment. So that was the passion or the drive to like assist them and help them understand what it means when your first PR failed, and mentor them and help them to pass through that. I remember my first mentor, I mean, Raja, is it Teresa, something like that, was a real mentor. He his constructive code review feedback and guidance on my peers, it was one of the things that magnetized me. I can say magnetized me and kept me continuing my open source contribution. Honestly, real mentors know that investing time in today's contributors means you are developing maintainers and leaders that will sustain open source project tomorrow. You see, I'm still in open source just because uh, Raja is an Indian name, so forgive me if I'm pronouncing it wrong. Raja was my mentor then, and he encouraged me, and he made sure that I got all the help that I need, and just that. What he did then is still what is keeping me in open source. So the role of mentoring a new open source contributors cannot be overemphasized, honestly. And open source projects, if you can see around you, they thrive when contributors feel supported, they're valued, and that they are seen. And so their efforts are not going in for waste. So they keep contributing. Thank you.
Yeah, I think there have been so many great points from Stephen and Peculiar. So I'll just add a bit of comments. So for me, I see mentorship as having familiar faces. Mentorship in itself is having an experienced individual show you and guide you through the process, and even with constructive feedback. And when I heard Steven talk about like near peer mentorship, I think over the years, there's a way we've wrapped mentorship to be that we're losing what it is in its raw form, in the sense that even with near peer mentorship, it's limited in a way because people can figure things out themselves. Not everybody can. But then when people figure things out, there's a limit to where they can figure it out. So if a peer is mentoring another peer, while it's helpful to get people involved in the project. It's helpful to get people they're on the same page so they learn together. But then there's a limit they can go, in the sense that they don't know the entirety of the project. So for me, I see mentorship as having familiar faces, and also moving, like picking from what Peculiar said, moving beyond the first contribution, sticking around. So if you in your open source project, right, you need those familiar faces around for people that are joining the project, because contributing to open source and figuring out a project code base, figuring out how to participate in meetings, or how do people do this thing in this particular project, sometimes it differs. So I think what I'll just end here with is being familiar to the people that are coming into your project. Like, how are you creating space for them, right? So I think mentorship is it's very, very important. It moves people, like Peculiar said, it moves people from just making that first contribution to sticking around, to staying back, because I know that this person, when I submit this work, they can tell me how to do it better. They can tell me what I can do to make it better. They can appreciate the work that I'm doing. So I will come back again to make a contribution to that project, or I will stick around because this person is there, or this set of people are there that are cheering me on. So yes, I think mentorship is so important, and we should really stick to the core of it and the raw form of it. Yes.
All right, thanks everybody. So we have 10 minutes left, so I wanted to see if there were any questions from the room.
Hi, thanks for that presentation. I'm curious how you, with the emphasis on mentorship, how do you scale that to communities that have a dozen or 100 people showing up?
Okay, so how you can scale that where you have a lot of people, not just 100, a lot of people showing up, like in kiosk community, we have about 3,000 and more people showing up. Is if you start with one person, give them opportunity, mentor them, the next person, just like a chain of knowledge transfer. So you have like 3 or 4 persons you have mentored, and you empower them to mentor others, give them opportunities to work on a project, give them an open hand to lead a community or to lead a working group or to uh, be in charge of one thing. It might be just minute, it might be just documentation, and then you give them in charge to do that. Then, as other people in your community, like let's say these 100 people in your community, you are not just putting them just under one umbrella. You are like diversifying, moving them into different under these other groups you have created, under these other people you have mentored. So those ones you mentored are will go a long way to mentor others under them, right? So you are not just doing it yourself. You have like a tree, you have branches, and these branches are also growing other branches. So these other people you've mentored are the branches you have, and those branches, others coming in, are then attaching themselves under them, and they are branches, they're also mentoring those ones. And as time goes on, that's how you're able to like cover all those people you have. You can also create a mentoring program for your community where you can capture those that needed this mentorship to go in. And then those leaders you've already mentored are going to be the ones mentoring all the other ones. Yeah.
Yeah. So just to add one more thing. First, I acknowledge how difficult that can be. Having a lot of people show up in a project. I found the office hours to be something quite helpful. Like in the Chaos Project, we do these newcomer hangouts I think it's about Tuesdays, every Tuesdays. So people that are new to the project can come around to ask questions. I think usually with contributors, on the flip side, not everybody wants to be mentored, to be very honest. So, and then there's
Yeah.
that funnel of people coming in. There's some people that just come in, they just want to be around. Not everybody would, in that 100, might get into mentorship, right? So I think from using office hours, you get to interact with the people that are joining the project for the first time. You get to know what they are looking for, and then through office hours, then you direct them to, and to be very honest, when you start that first phase, you begin to see that that number reduces sometimes. So I just wanted to acknowledge how difficult that can be, but using office hours as a first layer to get in touch with people that are joining your project could be really, really helpful.
Yeah, I really like Ruth's idea of office hours. That's something that we don't use enough in the formal structure that we're doing, and I think we can. I mean, we've got a different scaling problem because ours is trying to figure out how to actually scale this out across other projects. I've had to be very picky about the projects that I work with because I'm not running Google Summer of Code here in a university setting. I have students paying money to learn something, so they need a somewhat more predictable outcome. So we've been looking at challenges and how to scale things directly as to scale the project up to accommodate more projects and more people teaching it. But I really like that idea, Ruth, because it's just that's the way to scale it down into a project properly. Like I said, I've been I've had to choose carefully when I bring projects into the program because I'm bringing like there's I've brought in Apache projects. There's a few Eclipse projects that I'm working with, and some OpenStack projects typically. And those have really strong environments of mentorship. They're big projects, so they've got lots of strong mentors. And I know that it's always funny to watch the students hit their first pull requests kind of halfway through the course, because they're used to talking directly to their mentors. And then all of a sudden a community shows up to have opinions about their code. And so that's this kind of aha moment for them, that this is a much larger group of people. And so it's trying to kind of manage them in. But I know that I'm working with communities that welcome new people in. I don't know. I've been lucky in that path. I'm not sure if I had to start over again in a smaller project, how I'd do it.
Thank you. We are running a bit over time. So thank you for the panel, and see you later.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.